Soy. Aslo, Aslo. Her square face in the black dress, black tresses, macaroni lips, torticas de moron, mango, moron, not marron, noun, marooned, juice glasses smell of fish, like a rolling stone. Three from his pocket. Compression play in the bright colors of an odd day. Well, let you try to read that, because this should have worked. This should have been on Firefox, although I was offered Firefox, but I'm always tempted by Microsoft. Huh. So let's see. Okay. So I think I'll start towards a conclusion here, which you always do with as a conclusion. As a conclusion, I must call to the salsa in our souls. And with that, I would just briefly mention that part of the objective in the talk is to, so my book that's in progress now is called, it's about lateral poesis, which has to do with sort of translations that move across languages and across boundaries and across gender, etc. But taking in mind that we're communicating through a medium which is words, which has all of these laces, which bind and release, that are etymological and our borrowings and our lendings. So the object here is to create a sort of critical, poetic approach to try and express something that maybe can't be quite approached critically, nor maybe not even quite approached poetically. Not in any attempt to discard either of the approaches, but to offer a sort of middle way. And so into that, and I have a couple of flyers here about a film I just made this summer called Middle Orange, Media Naranja, the title of which I could spend 10 minutes on, but it's on Vimeo, so you could take one of those if you want to see it. But of course, I think most people have a sense about what a middle way is, with a bit of resonance of sort of Buddhism, or let's say Buddhist philosophy, perhaps. But in this sense, a sort of philosophy of poesis that finds this middle way through language, and that would be languages, because certainly in electronic media and in avant-garde practices, such as are addressed in this event, national boundaries become less important than the actual task at hand. As a conclusion, I must call to the salsa in our souls, that delirious mescla of upbeats and downbeats that, though seemingly conflicting, as a unity engage body and sound and energy. I also invoked once again the words quoted in Digital Poetics of a poet writing prose, Robert Duncan, that the words prose and poetry come from the words prose and verses. This can be directly seen in the metaphor of the field, which does not produce if it is not plowed. As to plowing, prose refers to movement in one direction, verses in a returning movement. Thus, cultivation, also there's a Buddhist resonance there. Thus, cultivation is a direct result of the complementary actions of prose and verses. It is the balance between the two activities that results in the thoughtful engagement of entering the field which we imagine. Thank you. I'm not sure what the format is. I think John takes over now. Preguntas. Any questions?
3 minutos. 3 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Is
Electronic poetry dead?
it dead? Well, this is really the task at hand in a way, because I see it very interestingly, as many of us who have been around a little while realize that anything anyone tries to do immediately becomes co-opted by sort of forces outside. And so if you know, well, we're having our 10th anniversary of ePoetry, the Digital Poetry Festival in Buffalo, in May next year, May 2011, and so it's amazing to see what's happened in digital poetry in the 10 years. But one thing is, and I'm sure you recall, you were there, Mikhail was there, at that time, and I remember, oh yeah, the wonderful guy from Belgium, you know who I mean?
Pierre Bergaud.
No.
Patrick Bergaud.
No, not Bergaud. He's not from Belgium. He's French, living in the was living in the Netherlands. Anyway, he's sort of some people have sort of gone off the map a little, but a lot of animations and that sort of thing, which has sort of been really taken over by, you know, Chevy ads and whatever. I mean, there's just nothing innovative about that anymore. So kind of that whole idea that extended from, say, concrete poetry of, you know, and even experimental poetry of the 20th century of the word and liberty, etc., which I think was celebrated at the beginning of e-poetries, has sort of been, you know, co-opted or whatever. So I'm not sure what the direction is. And so then there's the whole programming end of it, which in some ways has and has not panned out, because programming, I mean, except for programming, which would be more like in the farming that you're doing, which is kind of like localized and in relation to a medium and to a locality, as opposed to the, you know, big combines and processes that happen in Kansas and probably Nevada. So except for those localized, you know, actions in the French sense of action being kind of a resistance, programming also hasn't panned out. I mean, you know, nobody's designed a writing machine after all these years, and that's because they designed secretary machines and bookkeeping machines. So I'm thinking that the salvation that, you know, has maintained some continuity through world wars, atomic bombs, invasions of third world countries, genocides, etc., poverty, starvation, which is, unbeknownst to many, probably literally occurring in this exact second as we speak, to probably 70% of the world's population. The word to me has sort of seems to be a continuity, to provide a continuity, and that's what I'm trying to approach. And this work here is a kind of a sense of a work that can and be engaged technology and be engaged in this sort of digital environment, and yet somehow tries to weave or connect with some kind of larger meanings in expression.